is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories. Flames engulfed this building in South Africa's biggest city, killing at least 73 people, most of them believed to be migrants. Our other headlines, Tropical Storm Idalia barrels across the southern United States, bringing heavy rain and strong winds to Georgia. Russian and Turkish foreign ministers hold talks in Moscow about a possible new grain deal in the Black Sea. And the search for victims of the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century nears its end, with dozens of people still unaccounted for. At least 73 people have now been killed in a major fire that engulfed a 5-story building in South Africa's biggest city. Officials say it's one of the worst building fires in Johannesburg's recent history. More than 50 people were injured in the blaze, which broke out in the middle of the night. The building in the central business district is being described as an informal settlement used by squatters. It's believed most of the occupants were African migrants, and at least 7 children are among the dead. The authorities are working to determine the cause, with indications people had lit fires inside to keep warm.
I'm losing my sister. 3 sisters already I'm lose, and also my thing. Any things I didn't bring from inside because that time I was already to protect my life.
The actual fire escape was closed, so there was a lot of people. A lot of people smoke. People were suffocated. A lot of people died because of the smoke, because there was a lot of pressure at the gates. Some of the gates were closed.
Tropical Storm Idalia continues to bring heavy rain and strong winds to parts of the United States as it moves offshore from South Carolina. Idalia made landfall on Florida's Gulf Coast as a powerful Category 3 hurricane. It's caused flooding and has left over 400,000 homes in Florida, Georgia and South Carolina without power. The cost of the damage in the state of Florida alone is expected to exceed $9 billion.
We stayed in the Walmart parking lot last night and the wind was just howling. And we were boxed in, and there was other residents there from, that left their house, and man, it was unbelievable how strong winds can be.
Now I'm just cleaning up the messy yard, the fence that blew over, and things like that, and waiting for the electricity to come back on.
The search for victims of the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century is now coming to an end. At least 115 people were killed in the fire on the Hawaiian island of Maui, and dozens of people remain unaccounted for. Our correspondent Hendrik Sybrandi reports.
Tim Laborde is on what seems like mission impossible, tracking down his stepfather, Joseph Lara, who lives on Maui and remains unaccounted for 3 weeks after fire broke out on the island.
I haven't heard from my father since the fires had started, so we haven't been able to locate him.
The search for the missing on ground strewn with ash and bones has been frustrating at times.
We are going to do this right. We're not going to do it fast. We cannot be in a rush to judgment.
It's a search many family members have played an active role in.
So this is the ANDI Rapid DNA Instrument.
Stephen Meir is Chief Information Officer for ANDI, a technology company whose microwave-sized device has been indispensable in identifying victims' remains in Maui.
The results have been spectacular. We have close to a 90% success rate in getting DNA from these very, very damaged remains. This is what we call our biochip.
This plastic mini DNA lab is filled with vials of samples and inserted into the machine. 94 minutes later, the unique genetic signature of each sample is revealed. Specialized software then attempts to match the DNA to reference samples that family members of the missing have already contributed. At a time when conventional labs are often backlogged with cases with DNA that's degraded over time, this technology has proven to be a game changer. We first dropped by Andy in 2017, shortly after the deadly Camp Fire in California, where its rugged portable device played a pivotal role. The tool also helped identify victims of the 2020 Kobe Bryant helicopter crash and has allowed police agencies to clear scores of crimes. The instruments are on the ground now in Ukraine. Rapid DNA also offers a very personal benefit to victims' loved ones.
You're trying to resolve the family situations and give closure to the families, which is by far the most important piece here.
That's assuming families are willing to cooperate. These days, many worry about their privacy. But Mir says a person's DNA can only tell you so much.
It's safe, it's easy, it's secure, it doesn't hurt. Your DNA data isn't going to be used for anything else other than matching to a missing family member.
On Tuesday, Labort's 86-year-old stepfather was added to the list of confirmed fatalities. At least 48 Maui victims have been identified so far, but the matching process continues. These quick confirmations, unheard of just a few years ago, have made rapid DNA more and more widespread, almost essential during mass casualty events like these. And Rick Sabrandi, CGTN, Longmont, Colorado.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says an investigation has been launched into what he calls systematic corruption over medical exemptions from military duty. He says bribes of up to $15,000 had been taken, while many people had fled abroad. In some regions, the number of conscripts removed from the armed forces register for medical reasons had increased tenfold since the start of the conflict. All Ukrainian men aged 18 to 60 deemed fit for service are restricted from leaving the country. Ukraine's defense ministry says its troops have secured some new successes in the south and the east of the country as they try to push forward their counter-offensive against Russia. Kyiv's army has been making slow progress against Russian minefields and trenches, blocking a southern push intended to reach the Sea of Azov and split Moscow's troops. On Monday, Ukraine said it had liberated the strategic settlement of Robotyne. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is meeting his Turkish counterpart for talks on a possible alternative to the Black Sea grain deal. Last month, Moscow pulled out of the agreement, which allowed for the safe export of Ukrainian grain through the region's ports. Turkey is hoping to persuade Russia to return to some kind of agreement. Let's talk to our correspondent, Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. Dasha, what more do we know about these suggestions to some kind of alternative grain deal?
Well, indeed, as we understand from Moscow, Russia is interested in supplying and steadily supplying grain to the international markets, and that's why there are negotiations on all fronts. We understand Moscow is in the consultations and the discussions on the return of Russia back to the Black Sea grain deal, but those talks, according to different sources and according to the Kremlin, are going on quite difficult. We have heard the Kremlin spokesman saying that there are no concrete results of the negotiations on the Black Sea grain deal at the moment. He said it is very difficult to say how fruitful those results could be. But again, he said Russia was willing to be a reliable supplier of grain to the international markets. But at the same time, we also have heard from the Russian Foreign Ministry suggestions to discuss the proposal under which Moscow will be supplying 1 million tons of grain to Turkey at a discounted price with the financial support from Qatar, and then this grain will be processed in Turkey and then sent to the countries mostly in need. So this is one of the alternatives that is on the table at the moment. Again, there are many unclear issues with regard to that. The details are very sketchy. We are yet to hear for some concrete results of those negotiations, but definitely we understand from Moscow that this is one of the projects that is now being discussed as the optimal one, as an working alternative to the Black Sea grain deal. But again, we also understand that Ankara is interested in getting bringing back Russia to the Black Sea grain deal. But for that, Moscow has to see, according to the Russian officials, some concrete results when it comes to the implementation of the Russia-UN memorandum. And Russia has been saying that this part of the deal has never been implemented. None of the 5 major demands of Russia have been implemented. They are related to the issues of reconnection of Russia's Rossельхozbank to the SWIFT payment system, to the freight, to the insurances, and many other issues that have never, according to Moscow, been actually implemented because of the unwillingness of the Western countries.
There's been some speculation that a meeting between President Putin and Turkey's President Erdogan might take place within a matter of days. Do we know any more about that?
Well, that's right, and given the typical protocol, we are seeing now the meeting between the foreign ministers who are supposed to lay ground for the further meetings at the highest level. So we have heard today in the protocol session of the meeting between Hakan Fidan, the Turkish foreign minister, and Russian foreign minister Sergei Lavrov, the discussions that they are indeed discussing what will be on the agenda of the two leaders when they actually meet. Now, the understanding is that the meeting is being actively prepared. The Kremlin has said that the sides are working intensively to lay the ground for this meeting. There is speculation that the meeting could take place on Monday, on this 4th of September in Russia's resort city of Sochi, but some other sources are saying that could be a bit later. But certainly it is understood that it will be taken in a matter of days. Again, as for the agenda, we understand the sides also have to talk not just about grain, but also some issues of the bilateral relations and regional relations, as well as international agenda. And of course, the conflict in Ukraine is on the top of the agenda.
Dasha, thank you for that. Our correspondent Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station has been on the front line of fighting between Russia and Ukraine since the start of this conflict. It once produced a fifth of Ukraine's electricity supplies, but now all 6 reactors are shut down. Concern remains high over the potential for a catastrophic radiation leak, particularly in the nearby city of Nikopol, where people continue to suffer regular shelling and artillery fire from Russian troops. Our correspondent Yolo Abdavid reports.
Without warning, a bomb landed on her house.
Here was very heavy shelling, a lot of hits. We didn't have time, we took 2 steps, and the whole house exploded. We were knocked over by the blast wave, we fell down to the ground and everything was burning.
She shows us the damage and says she's lucky to be alive. She fears the shelling more than a blast at the nuclear power plant across the river. Because of its proximity to the nuclear site, people who live in this neighborhood are often targeted. The water level has dropped significantly since the Kakhovka Dam was destroyed in June.
Unlike any other city in Ukraine, Nikopol faces 2 serious threats. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant on the other side, barely 9 kilometers away, should there be a direct hit, and the nuclear fallout, and also the daily shelling from Russian soldiers who are stationed nearby.
Lubova's family depends on income from growing fruits and vegetables in the garden. One of her daughters lives nearby.
What are we worrying about? Everything. First of all, they're shooting and firing every day. And secondly, they say they're blowing up everything. And what happened with the Kakhovka Dam will happen here too. It's very scary.
Another sister, Natalia, lives in West Ukraine, but came home as soon as she heard of the attack.
There is a nuclear power plant that is constantly a danger to local people. We've been warned about evacuation and we had some pills, so we know where to go and what to do. But this is all because of the war with Russia. Russia is constantly shelling us, burning one house and then another.
More than half the pre-war population of Nikopol have left, but life and business does continue. This steel pipe factory has lost almost a third of its workforce, but still retains 2,000 employees. It's working round the clock, despite all the dangers and the uncertainty of trying to export its oil, gas and water pipes to the rest of the world.
We don't have any way to supply our goods from around the sea because of Russian troops blockade this area. And our logistic guys from our company to try to find another way to supply pipe market, European market, American market and Middle East market.
Interpipe is a big employer in Nikopol, and helps to sustain hundreds of families. Without this work, far more of the city's population would likely move away. Yoloap David, CGTN, Nikopol, Ukraine.
5 Italian railway workers have been killed by a train while conducting track repairs near the city of Turin. The empty passenger train was travelling at nearly 160 kilometres per hour on a line connecting Milan and Turin. The city's mayor described the incident as chilling and a huge tragedy and said an investigation is now underway. 2 other workers escaped unhurt. The European Union's foreign policy chief says there are no plans to evacuate EU citizens from Gabon after the military coup overthrew the government and named an army general as the country's transitional leader. Joseph Borrell said the coup followed a general election that was full of irregularities. Senior officers appeared on national television saying they had dissolved state institutions, closed the country's borders, and annulled the presidential poll. The DPRK has launched 2 ballistic missiles in a simulated tactical nuclear strike on South Korea. According to state media, the 2 missiles were fired from a launch site near Pyongyang. They traveled about 360 kilometers before landing in the water off the Korean peninsula's east coast. The launches came after the United States and South Korea conducted joint military exercises. You're watching CGTN. Still ahead, time for fair play. Calls in Spain for the country to stop normalizing sexist behavior in the aftermath of the football kissing scandal.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
There's a new agenda for a new world, accelerating change in almost every part of our lives. It's shifting the norms of how we work, travel, and connect. How we think, interact, and develop. It's a new reality, a new agenda with me, Juliette Mann.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more...
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
This is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. Flames engulfed this building in South Africa's biggest city, killing at least 73 people, most of them believed to be migrants. And Russian and Turkey's foreign minister hold talks in Moscow about a possible new grain deal in the Black Sea. Spain's acting equality minister says her country must stop normalizing sexist behavior. Irene Montero wants the furore surrounding Spanish Football Association president Luis Rubiales to mark a turning point after he kissed a player on the lips at the Women's World Cup final. It's a row that's brought worldwide attention, with many seeing it as an opportunity to force change far beyond football. Our correspondent Ken Brown reports.
A level playing field. That's what Spanish women want on and off the football pitch. The women's team had to win the World Cup before society listened, and now they've inspired an entire generation.
I love Jenny Hermoso and Olga, and I just think I love watching them play and how they create just plays, and they have amazing skills. I just think that if they can do it when even some of the players are really young, that maybe one day in the future I could do that too.
Sophia's father sees this moment as an opportunity.
Speaking as a dad, I want to make sure that my daughter has the best opportunities to excel at a sport that she loves. I think it's a really good sort of reflection point for the organizations, not just in Spain, but throughout, to make sure that girls are getting the best treatment and equal treatment, as not just in sport, but in society itself.
Rubiales has been suspended by FIFA for 90 days and now could potentially face a criminal charge for that kiss.
No voy a dimitir.
The Spanish Football Federation has unanimously called for him to step down and promised a new era with deep and imminent structural change. Female footballers earn 12 times less than the men in Spain, and of the 140 Federation Assembly General members, only 6 are women. Spain has showed Rubiales the red card. His time is up. The only one who doesn't seem to realize it is him. And while the removal of one person at the top of the Spanish FA won't solve all of Spain's problems of equality, participation and protection of women in society, many here hope that it will at least be a start. Far from the world of football, in the city centre Madrid gym, there's no getting away from El Caso Rubiales.
This is like the top of the tip of the iceberg. Women must be given the same importance and salary than men at the same level, and the institution must be completely washed and refilled with women that are directives, because we are as capable as the men.
Change in the air in Spanish sports and beyond. Ken Brown, CGTN, Madrid.
In Hungary, parents and pupils are getting ready for the start of the new school year, but for some families struggling to make ends meet, the rising cost of school supplies puts more strain on budgets already stretched by the cost of living crisis. Our correspondent Pablo Gutierrez reports.
Back-to-school shopping has been challenging this year for Janos Baradi. The father of 5 has searched for deals and spread his shopping across multiple paychecks. Still, buying the supplies his children need will be harder than ever.
I'm the sole provider for my family. My wife can't work, so buying everything they need is increasingly difficult.
Baradi isn't alone. Charities say thousands of families are relying on donations from community organizations to help them get their children back to school in September.
Many families cannot afford to buy all the items their children need when school starts this year. So we provide them with backpacks, pens and pencils, notebooks and everything else they need.
Hungary is grappling with an inflation rate of 17.6%, the highest within the EU. Prime Minister Viktor Orban says his government is working to try and reduce inflation to single digits by the end of this year.
The prices of back-to-school items in Hungary have jumped by 20%. For many families, the price hike makes it hard for them to buy the supplies their children need.
Baradi says he's shocked by the higher price tags he sees in stores on everything.
Some prices have doubled or even tripled. It's a nightmare.
Charities say this time of year is one of their busiest, but they are struggling to be able to offer the necessary help.
This year we received fewer cash donations, which makes it very hard for us to keep helping needy families. Those donations help pay for storage space and fuel, so we can deliver donations to those in need.
Baradi says without the help of charities this year, filling up his children's backpacks with the items they need would be impossible. In Budapest, Pablo Gutierrez, CGTN.
Wildlife lovers across the UK have been encouraged to take part in a big butterfly count this summer, the world's largest survey. Data provided by volunteers is used by the Butterfly Conservation Charity, which has noted a significant decline in numbers in recent decades. This is part of a wider crisis for insects, with some experts blaming farming. CGTN's correspondent Paul Barber reports.
The Butterfly House at London Zoo is full of beautiful specimens. Here, in this replica of their natural habitat, they can thrive away from predators and other threats. But in the wild, life is more difficult and butterflies are becoming harder to find. That's certainly what Amy Walkden and Emma Grice are finding in their rural village of Abbots Kerswell in southwest England. After school, Amy and Emma often take their children butterfly spotting. It's fun to go on a nature walk, but they're also doing it to provide data for the charity Butterfly Conservation.
Having a yearly record of what is around and what isn't around, I think, is really good scientific data to indicate changes such as global warming and habitat destruction. Butterflies are sensitive indicators of what's going on, so it's really important.
Monitoring takes place year-round, but the charity is encouraging people to take part in its Big Butterfly Count survey this August. It simply involves entering information into this free app about how many butterflies you see within 15 minutes. So far, I've seen a speckled wood and a holly blue. Data from volunteers helped produce Butterfly Conservation's latest report. Lead author Richard Fox says its findings are alarming. 80% of species are in decline, and butterflies are no longer present on average in nearly half the areas they were found 50 years ago.
The major causes of the decline are what we humans have done to the landscape in the UK over the past 50, 60, 70 years. And so that's things like the intensification of agriculture, which is not just chemicals that go into that, pesticides and fertilizers, but also changes to the landscape. So removing hedgerows, maximizing the space for growing crops and pushing nature out of farmland.
Back at home, the Walkdens are also raising caterpillars in their garden. Young Robin already has a good sense of how important this is.
If we don't have any butterflies and all the buzzy things, then the things that eat butterflies won't have any food, and the things that eat them, well, basically just the food chain. And part of the food chain is the things that we eat. And if there's none of them, then we will starve and we won't really be able to survive, will we?
The decline in butterflies and other insects is not limited to Britain, with a study in 2020 estimating insect numbers worldwide have dropped by 5 to 10% in the past 150 years. The UK government now includes butterfly numbers as an official indicator of biodiversity, and the hope is that with proper monitoring and other efforts to protect threatened species, the decline here could be halted. Paul Barber, CGTN, London.
And finally, the 80th Venice Film Festival has begun with a little less glitz and glamour than usual as the Hollywood actors' strike keeps many A-list stars away. The event began with the world premiere of an Italian World War II film starring the celebrated Pier Francesco Favino. It replaced the eagerly anticipated Challengers movie, which had to be withdrawn due to the strike. Festival organisers have still managed to attract a strong lineup, defying dire predictions of a mass no-show by big studio productions. The headlines again. Flames engulf this building in South Africa's biggest city, killing at least 73 people, most of them believed to be migrants. Our other headlines, tropical storm Idalia barrels across the southern United States, bringing heavy rain and strong winds to Georgia. And Russian and Turkish foreign ministers hold talks in Moscow about a possible new grain deal in the Black Sea. And that is The World Today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.